Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We have a great guest today. We're going to learn a lot. This is Jayney. Hello, Jayney. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thanks very much. And I've got Jesse with me. He's my rescue hound.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, he likes to be in on these interviews. I hope that's okay, Paul.
That's absolutely fine. All right. So let's get started. Where are you located?
I'm in England. I'm approximately where I'm at the moment at home. I'm working from home because of the little rescue boy. So I'm about to give you sort of bearings, 10 minutes away from Windsor Castle where the king lives. So
Oh,
yes, really
uh,
very sort of southeast England.
now, before we get started, I have a bunch of questions for you. Can you briefly introduce yourself and your story, and then we'll get into the details of it?
Yes, of course, Paul. I'll be absolutely delighted. I work in the field of complementary and integrative health and well-being. I'm a writer, broadcaster, written quite a few books now, and I have a day job, which is that I'm president of the Complementary Medical Association. It's a fantastic organization. It's actually the world's largest professional body for complementary medicine and I shouldn't say alternative really, because we don't really talk in those terms anymore, but more integrated health practitioners. So we look after them globally. So it's a very exciting day job, so to speak. But when I'm not doing that, I'm writing, I'm looking after my clients, and my clients tend to be people who've kind of engaged with my latest book. It's called Rewind Your Body Clock. And that book tends to attract a female audience. I tend to end up talking a lot of the time about health and well-being from a natural healthcare perspective. And so we're dealing with things like particularly women's health issues, things like menopause, perimenopausal issues, that sort of thing. So it's really lovely, very exciting, very, very rewarding to be able to be of service and to be of help.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, when you were growing up, were you into health at all?
Yes, I was to a certain extent. I was a ballet dancer. The impetus back in the 80s, when, in ballet was really to be as thin and light as you possibly could be. And it was very much at the expense of being strong, which is really difficult because as a ballet dancer, I think probably most people watching will know that to be a ballet dancer, you've got to be immensely physically strong and physically fit. Back then, we were trained to have sort of to eat a low carb diet, which would have been something like oily fish, because back in the 80s, people thought oily fish was healthy. Also, perhaps chicken, because back in the 80s, people thought chicken, oh, it's a low fat. Of course, it's not anymore. Oh, it's a low fat meat. So, and we'd have that with some salad. So you can see the problem. This compounded the issues for me because not only was I not getting the nutrition I needed, but also I went on to develop an autoimmune condition called rheumatoid arthritis, which for those of you who don't know, it doesn't just affect the joints, as the name would suggest. It's actually a systemic autoimmune condition, so it affects everything. And thanks to things like molecular mimicry, we now know that a whole food plant-based diet is the way to go for autoimmune conditions, because as soon as you start putting a substance into your body that the body recognizes as being a dangerous attacker, in the case of animal proteins, they will get through a very leaky gut. They will go into the system. The body recognizes them as being an invader, attacks them, gets rid of them, great, but also then goes around the rest of the body going, aha, you look like an invader. So connective tissue, for example. And we see this pattern in most forms of autoimmunity. So that's sort of where I've come from. I've been involved in complementary medicine for the last 4 decades. And I teach and I write and I go around the world trying to spread the word, but particularly about eating well and protecting our non-human brothers and sisters, and really just trying to, do what I can in my own small way to serve. That's really it.
Okay, so what's your personal diet now? And
Okay.
tell us what your personal diet is.
Good question, Paul. Thank you. It's obviously it's a whole food plant-based diet, free of added refined salt, oil, or sugar. Again, everything I do, because I'm a geek at heart, I'm a research scientist, and so by training also, which I managed to do along the way, in the deep dark depths of history. So everything I do is evidence-based. And so, following this particular program sits well with me from a research perspective because we know that this is what helps people. It's got me into full remission. So clearly something's going on. But also, and I don't know if you found this when you became vegan, Paul, but I noticed a very big difference in my outlook regarding things like animal cruelty, intensive animal agriculture, and all the rest. And so I found that my compassion dramatically increased. I think I was always a kind and compassionate person, but it has kind of gone on steroids, it's much, much more so. And this is why I feel so compelled to do whatever I can for animal rights, as well as looking after myself with a whole food plant-based diet. So, for example, breakfast will be usually oatmeal or a smoothie, depending on the weather here in Britain. And then lunch is a big, big, big salad with, I tend to use either beans or something like tofu for my protein sources that aren't already in the in the salad veggies. And then evening will tend to be, I'm not fully raw. I used to be raw. Jessie, excuse me, sorry, my rescue boy is jumping around and telling me people are visiting. So Paul, thinking about evening meals, I started off this journey as a raw vegan, because that's how I learned to become vegan. I went off to, as it happens, Hippocrates Health Institute, and learnt, about this way of life. I found that being in Europe, Northern Europe, in winter, raw for me is quite difficult because I do tend to get really quite cold. So I will tend to have a cooked meal in the evening, which is usually steamed veggies, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and then fruit for dessert. We don't get mangoes as gorgeous as yours, Paul, in England. So it's usually our beautiful berries, our beautiful tree fruits like apples and pears, particularly in this autumnal season when we're speaking now. So yeah, so it's all very simple. It's very, very simple and easy to put together and easy to pre-prep, which is what we need when we are all so busy.
And do you take supplements at all?
I do actually, yes. I take D3 because, again, in Northern Europe, that's pretty required. You could be crazy not to. And I think it's not just a vegan thing. I think everybody should be taking D3. I do take a vegan source of D3. So, and also I do the old trick of putting the mushrooms that I eat on the windowsill, because that massively increases their D3 content. The next, of course, I do take my insurance policy is my B12 supplement. And then I do tend to also, I tend to be low on certain things. I tend to not metabolize iron particularly well. Again, this is all coming from actual tested data. So I don't advocate people take supplements unless there is a proven need to do so. So the supplements I take, I have a proven need that I have, and this is based on genetic testing, because there are certain things I metabolize well, certain things I don't. And I would suggest people do actually look into getting themselves tested. There are some fantastic genetic tests that you can get done, which come back with brilliant reports that are really easy to action. So as far as my other supplements are concerned, I do take an iodine supplement, again, a nice vegan iodine supplement.
And what about nutritional testing? Do you blood test for nutrition?
Yeah, I do. So, I mean, because of rheumatoid arthritis and because we have a National Health Service, the NHS here in the UK, we're incredibly lucky that we can get all of our testing for free. So, well, free at point of delivery. Obviously, we pay for it in our taxes. But nevertheless, it's really lovely that I can go to the doctor and say, please, can you test my D3 levels? Please, can you test my B12 levels? Can you test my homocysteine? Can you test this, that, and the other? And they will do so. And it does make life a lot easier just to be able to say, go along and go to the phlebotomist at the hospital and say, okay, here's my big long list. Can you get some blood out for that? So yeah, we're just very, very lucky here.
Wonderful. Now, do you see any problems with vegans uh, from a nutritional standpoint? Is there something common that you see made the connection between their not eating and some deficiency, or is it just pretty much everyone? Or do you see anything specific with people that stop eating animal products that have a common issue and you just tell them, well, just eat this food and you're fine, or they are eating the food and they still have an issue?
Right. Okay, Paul. That's a really good question. Thank you. Yeah, brilliant. I have to say that among my patients, um, obviously, we're going to talk about, B12, we're going to talk about D3 because those are the two big ones, possibly iodine, again, if testing proves to be required. Generally speaking, the vegan population who follow a whole food plant-based diet are healthier than the meat-eating population. We know that through, my observation, but also we know the data supports that. Um, However, in the UK and other parts of Europe, and I don't know how it is in the States because I've not noticed this as much in the States, and perhaps you can speak to this, but in the UK, veganism is predominantly embraced by animal rights activists and not so much the health activists. And I know that, of course, the original position statement on veganism is that it is an animal rights issue. It certainly is animal rights for me. Absolutely, I am an ethical vegan, but it happens to have helped my health just as exponentially. And I see this with my patients. I tend to attract patients who are suffering with chronic disease, autoimmunity. So these are people who are very unwell and for whom conventional medicine has not provided any answers. I get them onto a whole food plant-based diet, a really good dietary program. And then we test, and I don't really see any real issues. So I have to say, in my experience, whole food plant-based eaters are healthier than the general population, absolutely 100%. The vegan population in the main has been tested over here. And given that most vegans are doing this just because of the animal rights perspective, even so, even if they're junk food vegans, they're not eating those animal foods that are so deleterious to health that even they are healthier than the normal population, if you like, the normal population being meat eaters. So it's a really interesting thing. I think it underlines the danger to health of eating animal protein. So it's shocking. I mean, it's absolutely shocking when you see that. I don't know how it is in the States there. Do you find that you've got vegans who aren't bothered over there because they're doing just the animal rights path?
Well, bearing the animal rights part, it's kind of interesting because I don't see vegans being healthier here in the United States. Because most people that are eating vegan diet, even for health reasons, are not doing it healthy because the diets they're eating, even if it's not necessarily vegan cookies and cakes, they're still eating a lot of seed oils, which are the mimicking of the animal products, which are almost worse in my degree, bearing the animal rights part of it, almost more unhealthy than the actual eating the actual animal part of it, if you
Mm.
look at it from a certain standpoint. So
Yeah.
I see a lot of people on a vegan diet that aren't doing it correctly, I'll say, and they think they're doing it correctly, so they're not even checking up on their health until they end up with an issue, and then
Yeah.
they might go say, "Oh, well, this diet's not working for me." So I think it's just as careless. I think people are eating too much, too often, and too late, and the people that are eating a vegan diet. I see them eating a lot of foods that are like mimicking what they gave up, and it's a problem. Now, I appreciate the work and the diet you promote because it's a whole foods plant-based diet. But let's be honest, most people that are on a vegan diet, whether it's for animal rights or even for health, don't even understand what that means. And most
Mm,
people in the world that are eating meat and healthy meats, you know, not most, but a good amount of them, you got bodybuilders, you got athletes. They think they're deceived to think the meat diet is good, but they're watching that other stuff also. They're trying to get
mm,
whole foods and
mm.
and other things. They're like they're serious about their diet, even though they're eating the meat. So I think there are a lot of meat eaters that are healthier than a lot of vegetarians, from what I see.
That's really interesting. It's very interesting you should say that, Paul, because obviously I'm looking at this through the lens of living here in the
Sure.
UK. The analog foods that you mention, we are very lucky here in the UK insofar as they have been put together pretty well. And so they are certainly, even as I say, the fake meats, they are not as unhealthy as animal protein, actual animal meats. So we tend to be quite lucky with that because the companies that manufacture here they seem to be pretty switched on. And it may be big economy of scale because obviously you've got a much smaller audience here in the UK. So it may just be that they can manufacture those particular products in the way that they do to the scale that we need over here. There are more vegans per capita in the UK than in any other country in the world. So it has massively taken off here. So, there is a lot of demand and there is a lot of demand for healthy products. I think a lot of people have realized that some of the analog foods are desperately unhealthy. I mean, for example, I know that you've spoken with Dr. Frank Sabatino, my partner. He and I, we avoid some, you can get these sort of pseudo cheeses that are absolutely chock full of coconut oil, for example, which is a massive dose of fats that we just don't need. So there's a lot to be said. You've got to be very aware, and it's very difficult, I think, to find out information, although a lot easier than it used to be many years ago. I think 45 years ago, whatever it was when Frank started, things were very different, for us. I mean, I can walk into any supermarket here in the UK and walk out with a basket full of really quite healthy goodies. Whether I choose to use, I don't use analog meats, but if I did use them, there's quite a lot of really healthy stuff there. It's remarkable, actually. So we're quite lucky.
Yeah, what about essential fatty acids? Like where do vegans do you see like it's really hard because some people say measuring the blood, which is the common test for it, is really not a accurate test. Others say it is, and if it's low, you're low, and if you're a vegan, you're gonna be low because where sources are you gonna get it from?
Mm.
So some people would say, well, chia and flax, and other people say, well, that's not enough. You need to take algae oil. So there's
Mm.
quite a new information, but disagreement information on this. So, what's your opinion about vegans and essential fatty acids?
Yes, exactly. It's a really good question again. The problem with this question is that it's an evolving issue, isn't it?
Sure.
So I think that where we are with the current thinking is that plant sources of essential fatty acids are far more bioavailable than was previously believed. Um, I don't know if you've spoken to Jeff Palmer at
Yes, I
all.
have. I have.
You have, yeah.
I've
So
interviewed
to
him.
me, Jeff is really one of the leading thinkers and knowledge bases in this particular field. I would always bow to Jeff's expertise because he's way more advanced in this research than I am. Um, I have to say that to me, I believe that all of us are probably whether we're conventional eaters or vegans or plant-based eaters. I think we are getting too much nutrition in the West, in the developed nations and so on, as it is. It's very, very unusual to see somebody who really has a deficiency of anything, actually. It takes an awful lot to get into a deficiency state. Possibly if you were following a mono diet, that could possibly do it. So I'm not overly worried about my patients showing deficiencies. I'm probably more concerned about excesses of certain nutrients. It's possible to be too high in D, it's too high in B12. So this is why I do believe in testing. The essential fatty acids, again, as I say, the jury's out a little bit on the testing side of things. But I've not really seen people having problems with being too low.
Sure. Well, when it comes to excesses in diet, there are a lot of people that promote a whole plant-based diet or natural hygiene that do not limit their fruit intake.
Mm.
And some people are to say, we know there's a massive amount of sugar in people's diets in general. So some people say if the sugar is in fruit, it's attached to the fiber and it doesn't matter, while others say it doesn't matter. Fructose is fructose in the body and it still has to go somewhere. So do you find that uh, and we know everyone can do too much, but do you find a lot of people that switch to a whole plant-based diet possibly overeat on fruit?
Um, I tend not to limit fruit intake in my patient group because we're here in the UK, so the types of fruits that we're getting are things like berries, apples, pears, and so on. And our fruits have not been so hybridized as they are in the US in order to make them sweeter. So the fructose burden of fruits in the US is much, much higher. So it's a slightly different situation. In the UK, it would be very, very difficult to OD on fruits, to be quite honest with you, and to take on board too much fructose, as long as people are eating the fruits as whole fruits, so that you're getting all of the cofactors along with that fructose that really supports things like the liver processing and so on. So it's not such a problem here. I think it's more of an issue in the States, where you do have this hybridization. For example, I don't know how many of our viewers are aware of the difference between a US dessert and a European dessert. If you're a European coming to America and having a dessert, it's not edible because the American palate has been trained to be able to take more and more and more sweetness. We come over and it's like, oh my goodness me, what on earth is that? I can't eat that. That is way too sweet. And it's very similar with the fruits. I'll be eating, I'll be eating a fruit in the US and think, gosh, this is, it's delicious, but it's a lot sweeter than we get in England, the apples and so on. And of course, obviously, then you've got different sets of circumstances where you've got naturally sweet fruits, and where I was had the adventure of my life coming to have mangoes with you, and learn about all of that, and that was just magical. And truthfully, I suppose, as long as people aren't overeating, I don't think it's a huge problem. But again, it's actually training people to understand what is overeating and overconsumption and what isn't. And if there is a tendency to overconsume, perhaps there's maybe something else going on that's on a deeper level than merely just wanting to eat fruits because they're tasty. Maybe there's an addiction there. Maybe they should be reading Frank's book, Weightless, Compassionate Weight Loss for Life, because, he addresses all of those points in there. And I address these things with my patients as well.
Absolutely. So, there's always that marker of what is really overeating. And, we can look into a degree, maybe if somebody's a marathon runner versus somebody's an office worker. But like you came here, you had a couple of delicious sweet mangoes, very sweet mangoes. You could sit down and have a few mangoes or whatever. But if you sat down and you had like 10 mangoes, I mean, there are people out there that call themselves fruitarians that don't see any issue with that. I mean, and who are we to say, well, you're overeating or not, but like, where's that line where you feel if it's like a super sweet fruit, like you don't limit your fruit intake, you say, but if somebody's going to eat 7, 8, 9, 10 pieces of fruit, where's that limit where you could say, well, you might be overeating and it might, and if they are overeating, what kind of issues can it cause?
Yes, okay. Well, you're right, Paul. I mean, fruitarians, the question is, are they eating too much fructose? Possibly they are. Again, it depends on where they're based, in the world. I think fruitarians tend to be based more in the warmer countries because it is, you get a better variety of fruit and, it's just nicer. Our fruit here is seasonal, for example. So when I say I don't limit my fruit intake, I will have berries, a few berries on my oatmeal. I may well have a few berries after dinner, or an apple cut up, or for lunch today I was in such a hurry with work. I just had an apple cut up, so I'm not massively, sort of overeating fruit. So that, I say I don't limit it, but the point is I'm not having too much. I think really, the going back to the research, to answer your question, going back to the research, I think that the research really points to the fact that we humans need a variety within our diets. We need grains, so whole grains. We need fruits. We need vegetables. So it's very nuts and seeds, beans, legumes, and so on. The more variety I believe we can have, so much the better. And the reason I say that is because we need to look at gut flora. What best supports the gut flora as a prebiotic and a probiotic? What we do know, and I believe Neil Barnard was talking about this just recently at the NHA conference, and he was talking about his power foods, and it's a really beautiful variety. And he was again talking about, gut health and the variety of foods that our microbiome really thrives on. So personally, I'm not quite sure how I feel about fruitarians. If they tell me they're doing really, really well and their bloods are really, really good, well, who am I to argue? I wouldn't be that arrogant. But, in my experience and looking at the research, I think variety is the spice of life.
Sure. I don't want to put you on the spot, but when I interviewed Frank, he said, because fruit, if eaten in its whole form, is attached to sugars attached to the fiber. I hope I'm quoting him correctly, and forgive me if I'm not, Frank, but I think he said it's impossible for somebody to overeat on fruit because they'd get full before it becomes too much. I haven't found
Yeah.
that to be the necessary case because I've seen people like eat massive amount of fruit,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and
Yeah.
they just don't seem to stop. I mean, so
Yeah.
I mean, I could be wrong, but like they seem not to get that signal. Okay, you've had enough.
Mm.
Like, I mean,
Well,
those
yeah.
mangoes that you had in my house. I mean, if I was eating and eating and eating, not stopping, is there a time where you would have said, "Hey, Paul, you've had sat down at 20 mangoes. What are you doing?"
Enough already, yeah. Yeah, I think actually both. I think that Frank is right. People tend to get full. But I think the part of that puzzle that just needs to be emphasized is that if people are eating to excess, and whatever that excess level is going to be a very individual thing for each person, depending on tolerance and so on. But if we could establish it, gosh, actually, you individual are eating you're eating far too much fruit here. It's really not doing you too many favors, and they continue to do so, then there's a deeper problem. It's not just what this person fancies to eat. It's something that is rather compelling them to actually possibly overeat. And that is something that needs to be looked at more carefully. And it may be an emotional issue. A lot of time, don't forget that we eat our feelings. Eating is a fantastic way of suppressing feelings and emotions if they've not been dealt with. So I think it can be helpful to, I mean, one of the things we do know actually, Paul, is that we know that practices like mindfulness meditation and just generally spending time being mindful. My little Opal has come to visit us now from the rescue centre. Little girl, she's very sweet and very friendly. But yes, these sorts of strategies that have been developed by these wonderful scientists, John Kabat-Zinn, for example, with his mindfulness-based stress reduction, the wonderful Dr. Herbert Benson, who I learned with at Harvard Medical School in his School of Mind Body Medicine. All of the strategies that these wonderful doctors have developed actually have been shown to really help with things like moderating food intake, helping people to keep weight off if they've successfully lost weight, and so on. Things like metta loving kindness meditation is also another incredibly well-proven way of helping people to observe their intake and to modulate it to a healthier kind of level, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. I think there's definitely an emotional issue there when people are overeating on any food, not just fruit, any food. I think there's definitely something going on, something else. And
Yes.
we get pleasure from food, but shouldn't be our primary source of pleasure. And when people use it like that and overdo it, something's definitely missing. I'm in agreement. So that's a very good answer. So let me ask you about your personal sleep patterns. What time do you eat last meal, and when do you normally go to sleep, and for how long?
Okay. Well, Paul, you're talking to a reformed insomniac, by the way. This is something I'm very, very keen on. So I have to guard my sleep. And what I mean by that is that I've got very, very strict rules. I have a wind down, sort of process. And so on. So let me talk you through it. And I talk about this a lot on my blog, actually, on my website. Now, I will eat my last meal really no later than 6:30 at night. I find that works very, very well for me. I tend to then head to bed about 10 o'clock. I'll then probably be asleep by about 10:30. I always make sure that I wake up at the same time every day, which is 6 a.m. Because I've obviously got to sort the animals out and all these rescue babies. And anyway, so I sleep in a cool room. I make sure there are no sources of light in the room. If I can't avoid that, for example, last week I was at a conference staying in a hotel with a flashing, smoke alarm thing. So I will use an eye mask, that sort of thing, and I use earplugs. I know it all sounds possibly a bit extreme, but this is so important for me because I've noticed that if I don't, you jump down, darling, good girl. If I don't do this, what tends to happen is I just can't function the next day. It takes a toll on me to such a great degree. I also have a yoga nidra meditation recording. It's a beautiful thing to do if people are interested in doing that. Yoga nidra is a type of almost like a body scan meditation, and you set an intention at the beginning for that meditation. And it has been shown to help people get into a very, very deep restorative sleep. And so I made a recording. It's on my website. It's a free download there for anybody who might want to try it. Everybody who has tried it has given it a glowing report. Most people say it's a great meditation, Jayney, but I have no idea how it ends because they fall asleep and stay asleep before it finishes. It's believed that 20 minutes of yoga nidra is the equivalent to 2 hours of deep restorative sleep, which is what we get when we're really in the deep levels of sleep. This is where our brain flushes out all of the toxins that are accumulated during the day. This is one of the reasons why deep sleep is so important, is because if we don't flush out those toxins, they stay within the brain and they are correlated with higher levels of developing dementia, for example, because they contribute to the growth of those neurofibrillary tangles and so on. So, sleep, you can't underestimate the importance of good restorative sleep.
Excellent. So how long now have you been on a vegan diet?
Oh my goodness, I believe it's over 15 years now, Paul.
And how long did it take you for you to overcome your arthritis?
Oh my goodness, you're not going to believe this if I tell you. But I'm going to tell you the story anyway. At my very worst, I was actually in hospice care and was not expected to make it. I was basically told by the conventional medical folks that, get your affairs in order because you're not going to really sort of last longer than a couple of weeks at this point. I was so ill, Paul. I'd gone down to about 85 pounds. I'd catabolized all of my muscle. It was absolutely scary. I had this runaway weight loss because my inflammation was it was just off the charts. It was so dangerous. Anyway, long story short, I had friends coming in, trying to help me, coming into the hospice, trying to help me. And, by this time, I thought I'd tried everything. I thought I was eating a healthy diet back in, this is the early 90s, no, late 90s, early 2000s by this time. I thought I was eating a healthy diet, my oily fish and my salad and blah, blah. And of course, didn't realize that was, because we were told back then that was what was a healthy diet. And I had 5 separate friends come in to see me and they all said, you need to go on a raw vegan diet. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness me, I can't possibly do that. That's not going to work. I've tried everything. Anyway, I started correlating these data and I realized that, 5 friends who don't know each other, who've been to this particular place and they've all gone vegan, and they've all survived their terrible diagnoses, and they had terrible diagnoses, believe me, and they're doing really well. Okay, finally the penny dropped. And so I took myself off after I got out of the hospice, which took another good 6 to 9 months. Bearing in mind at this time, I'd been a full-time wheelchair user for over 10 years at this point. I was told I would never walk again. My rheumatologist said to me, oh, just face facts, you're always going to be chair-shaped, nothing we can do. And I thought, well, that's not very kind. But it's a part of me that just didn't believe that. I just did not believe it. Similarly, being in the hospice, I didn't believe that they'd just given me this, deathly prognosis. I come from a long line of very obstreperous women who will not be told. So, it's like they'll say something, you can't do so and so. And I say, well, watch me. My mum's just the same as well, bless her. And anyway, so I did. I got myself over to Hippocrates in the wheelchair, having been told I would never walk again. And this is what you won't believe, Paul, but there are plenty of witnesses to attest to this. 3 weeks later, I was up and walking up and down the beach, 3 miles up and down, and then doing a yoga class and a Pilates class back to
I
back
believe
after
it.
that.
I was there yesterday. I believe it. It helped
Oh,
me. I understand. It's
I
like
know, I'm glad that you know, because a lot of people think, I don't
I
believe a
know
word.
firsthand because that's exactly my story. So what was it that got you out of hospice? Because that was did you start the raw food diet in the hospice or did you start when
No, I didn't. No,
how'd you get out of
actually.
that?
Okay. Oh my goodness. What I did was I didn't really quite know the background to this, but as I say, I have had all these friends coming in saying, you need to do this, you need to do this, you've got to do this, you've got to go, you've got to go. In the end, I just thought, well, okay, so while I'm here, what if I just eat the salad? And so that's what I was doing, and maybe a little nibble of a piece of mackerel or something like that for the oily fish that we're supposed to need. But because I was sort of transitioning without realizing, and so I was having oatmeal for breakfast, then I was having a salad for lunch and a salad again in the evening, perhaps with maybe some cooked veggies as well. I was kind of transitioning over without really realizing it. And this was really helping to reduce the inflammation. And by this time, I'd been there for about a month. And they finally said, listen, we need the room. You're going to have to leave because clearly you're doing okay. You're going to be all right. And I said, yes, I know. And they said, so we're going to put you into a rehabilitation center. And that's where the story got really dark because they put me into a rehab center where I was supposed to be getting physio and things that would help me and seeing a doctor that would possibly be able to look at prescribing something else, and so on. Not that I was wildly excited about taking conventional meds because they hadn't done me any good up to that point. Yeah, so I went to this place. I was in there for another 6 months, and you know you have to understand that I'm literally locked in a fetal position by this time. I had no muscle, and it was really very difficult and excruciatingly painful to even try to have any joints moved. It just to start to open myself up. But by using meditation techniques and continuing with my not very clever vegan diet. And I say not very clever because I didn't really know what I was doing. You know, this was the good thing about going to Hippocrates or somewhere like Frank's retreat or somewhere like that, where they
Or
show
even
you how to do
yourself,
it
even
properly.
having a coach like yourself, this would help people because
Exactly. That's right. Exactly. And that's why I tend to attract all these people who are really very, very seriously unwell, because you know they know that I've been there, seen it, done it. I've done it with so many
and
people
by the
that
way, everybody, I'm going to put Jenny's website below so you can contact her. Uh, and she works via the internet. So not you don't have to be in England to work with her. She works with people all over the world. Uh,
thanks. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Paul.
and a
That's
lot
really
of
very
ladies out there maybe not might not feel comfortable working with a guy. So, you know, here's your answer.
yes, yes.
And you know, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So okay, so yeah, so continue what you were saying.
Yes. So so I eventually found my way out of this dreadful place because I was stuck in a room. If anybody's seen that film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that's what it was like. It was horrendous. And so I realized I just couldn't be there for any 1 minute longer than I needed to be. So it was fantastic impetus to get the heck out of there. And so I eventually managed to sort of get back so that I was still in a wheelchair, but I was a lot better than I was. I'd sort of gradually been unfolding my body using meditation techniques and visualization techniques and so on. Um, it was just a strange experience, because the dementia wing was on the floor below the wing that I was on, the floor that I was on, and so they kept setting fire to the place and all sorts of strange
Wow.
things happening, and then other people on my wing were very, very seriously ill. Most of them have been involved in terrible road traffic accidents and things like that, and had terrible catastrophic brain injury. So it was constant screaming and shouting and so, and it was very challenging to be in that environment. So I just got myself out as quickly as I could, still in a wheelchair, but a lot better than I was when I went into hospice care, and I'd started to be able to, through visualization techniques, build muscle. I'm sure you're familiar with the research where they got people to do one group of the cohort to do an exercise. The other group in the cohort was to do the visualization of that exercise, and then there was a control group that did nothing. The actual weightlifting group, they improved their strength and that particular muscle being tested by 34%. The visualization group improved their strength by 28%, which is not that far off 34%. And when you consider they were doing nothing but visualization, and this is something I do need to do, I've got to put together a little course. I keep promising myself to do this, of exercise for people who can't exercise, for people who can't move. So whether they've had catastrophic injury or they're like me and they're lying in bed because, they can't move because they're in such excruciating pain. We've got to get people building muscle. It is so crucial for health.
When you went to Hippocrates, were you out of the wheelchair by that time
No,
or
no,
did
no,
you
no. I was in the wheelchair.
in the
I
wheelchair?
went, yeah, I went, having been told I would never walk again. So
Wow.
that's, yeah, so I was that bad.
So
So I went to Hippocrates with no expectations. I just thought I would get better, but I assumed that I would still be in the wheelchair. I didn't want to be in the wheelchair, and I assumed at some point I would be able to get myself well enough to be able to get out of it. But I certainly didn't expect it to take 3 weeks.
would you say it's accurate to say the raw food diet saved your life?
I would say it's 100% accurate, Paul. 100%. Absolutely. Yes.
Amazing. And
I
how
wouldn't
long were
be,
you on? How long were you on
sorry?
the Hippocrates diet until you started to just play around with it a little?
Well, that's a very good question. So the human mind is a very strange thing. I came back from Hippocrates very, very well, doing brilliantly. And then I thought, oh, this is great. I'm cured now. I'm going to carry on getting better. I can now go back to eating like an ordinary person. So I went back to having my salads and a little bit of fish, and and I was straight back in that wheelchair just a few months later. So I thought, okay, right. I'm going back to Hippocrates. And so I did. And then I was great again. And it honestly, I mean, I'm a bit slow on the uptake, but it took me a couple of goes before I realized this is what I have to do. I then stayed, I reckon probably fully raw, which is not that easy in the UK, but probably fully raw for a good 5 to 6 years. And then I thought, I think I might just, the other problem with for me, being fully raw is that your energy levels tend to get very, very high, and that can make sleep very, very difficult. So if you're already an insomniac, it's not a good situation. And I was finding that I just wasn't sleeping long enough for my needs. So again, I found when I introduced a little bit of cooked food at night, a jacket potato or a baked sweet potato, something like that. It just gives me that slow, steady carbohydrate that I need in order to be able to sleep through the night.
Sure. And so from a vegan, the vegan aspect of it, uh, one of the things I find is skin is the biggest elimination organ system of the body. And we want to keep it as clean as possible, get sunlight on it. But also, one issue I find with women in this country, and sadly now men, is the makeup is very toxic and has animal products in it. And some companies now are making more animal-free makeups, but still, you're still clogging the skin, you're clogging the pores, and it can contribute to elimination issues and detoxifying issues. Is this something you address when you work with these women? Because and for yourself, have you explored like, are you wearing vegan makeup? And this
Yes.
is something that you explore because it's a topic that a lot of people don't speak about and aren't aware of. So I just want to know if
Yes.
you account that in your
Yes.
practice.
Yes, absolutely. We do talk about in my blog, for example, I do cover natural, holistic, organic, vegan beauty topics because people they want to know. It's really interesting. You should raise it, Paul, because it is definitely it's kind of capturing the zeitgeist in a way because it really does capture what people are concerned about at the moment. We are very lucky in the UK to have a lot of actual vegan brands. Now, it's very interesting because I think we should raise this. There's a big difference between cruelty-free and vegan in makeup brands. A lot of the cruelty-free brands will contain animal products. For instance, I was talking to a company that approached me saying, oh, we've got this fantastic collagen product that is really so healthy and it will improve everybody's skin. Can you promote it? Well, for a start, I don't promote products. I don't believe in promoting products. And anyway, I said, is it cruelty free? And they said, yes. I said, okay. I said, is it vegan? And they said, oh no. I said, well, how can it be cruelty free but not be vegan? They said, oh, because we use the fish skins that are a byproduct of the fish industry, fish farming industry. And I'm thinking, well, how can you say that that's a cruelty-free product in the same sentence as fish farming? It's one of the most brutal, disgusting industries that there is. It's vile. It's so cruel. So I said, well, yeah, sorry, that's a hard pass for me. So I just want people to know that if there is something that says cruelty-free, please don't be duped into thinking that it's actually vegan. And please, do check because some of them will be cruelty-free and vegan. Well, that's great. That's absolutely fine. But, just watch out for that cruelty-free thing because it's this, greenwashing, the concept of greenwashing where these companies position themselves as being eco-friendly and so on. In actual fact, look under the hood, they're really, really not. This is where the cosmetics industry is doing the same thing. So we've got to be really aware. As far as makeup is concerned, actually, there's no reason why, if you get a good product that's clean and safe and animal friendly, there's no reason why you shouldn't put, let's say, a tinted moisturizer if you're going outside, because you do need to protect your skin as well. So it's a little bit, between a rock and a hard place. Sun exposure, as we know, is not good for skin if it's overdone. However, too little sun exposure is also highly problematic. We're seeing people in Australia where they've got the whole slip, slap, slop routine. So I think it's slip on a t-shirt, slap on a hat, and then slop on your sunscreen, and they're getting no sun. And children are developing rickets, for goodness sake, because of vitamin D deficiency. So it's with makeup and so on. It's just a case of being sensible. If it's blazing sun out there, put a little something on your face, providing it's non-toxic and it's vegan and cruelty-free. If you get a day where you're not having to, face your public, have a day without makeup. Just be sensible about these things. Always take your makeup off at night, ladies and gentlemen, if you choose to wear it.
Now, why take your makeup off at night?
Because this is where the majority of our skin cleansing happens. Our bodies cleanse themselves at night. If you clean your face, if you're wearing makeup, you clean, do a good cleansing routine. You don't necessarily need a moisturizer at night unless your skin is really, really dry. Most people do actually produce oil at night, and this is actually a really good thing. Your body's natural oil is the best thing for it. And so if you're putting an oil on your face, what happens is you're training your body. Oh, well, I don't need to produce this oil. It's being given to me anyway. A little bit like, with hormone replacement, as soon as you start replacing hormones, your body goes, okay, great. I don't need to produce this anymore at all because I'm getting it from somewhere else. So, I would always say just make sure that you are just aware of what your body can do and let it do that. That's actually a really good strategy.
Well, I find that when women and just people in general eat a more natural diet, their skin actually is beautiful just naturally. So I could
Yeah.
understand if a woman's like eating a bad diet and just doesn't have good skin, but why even wear the makeup if you naturally have beautiful skin and you just look great? Why even wear the
Yes.
makeup,
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's right. Exactly, Paul. I mean, unless it's a sort of like a sunscreen, a tinted moisturizer, for example, which can give somebody a little bit of glow, but it protects the skin if they're going to be outside in sort of really strong sun. Otherwise, no, you're right. I mean, the problem is, um, if you pick up any women's magazine, for example, any of the big commercial ones, we women are constantly being trained to believe that we're lacking, that we're not good enough, that we're missing something, we're not beautiful enough, we're not pretty enough, whatever. We're just not enough. And this is something that's been really foisted upon women since eons. And so, there is this constant messaging, and I really feel sympathy for women if they do feel, if they buy into that message and they do feel that they're not enough in any way, shape, or form, because they are. I mean, look at what women do, we bring life into the world, that's kind of one of the hardest things there is to do. So, it's just,
It's
yeah.
so sad the way men and women or boys and girls are trained up to believe today. And what you're saying is 100% right. Women are not, girls are not showing that they're good enough just the way they are. And they just, it's really, it's sad. And little girls are wearing it earlier and earlier. And it's just a sad thing, but it's great when you become aware of that. Now, as for the sunscreen on the body, this one's a little bit more controversial, but this is, I feel, important. No one talks about this, but it's important. Now, you've mentioned yogis several times and meditation, this stuff. In the Sikh religion or belief system, are you familiar with the Sikhs?
Yes.
Yeah. The men or women don't shave their body hair. And that, I believe, is God's natural protection from the sun, giving you the exact amount that should get in, but protecting you from overexposure. But
Yes.
this obsession with, at least in this country, I know in Europe it's caught on, but it wasn't as much in your country where women weren't shaving their bodies,
Mm.
but it's become such an obsession today that women
Yeah.
would shave and have smooth skin. But
Mm.
from a health standpoint, I don't think it's healthy to shave what God meant to be there, even the
Mm.
armpit hair or the
Mm.
body hair. Now we
Mm.
could say it's not a cultural thing today for a woman to have armpit hair, but it's just even if men shave their armpit hair, I think it's there for a reason
Yeah.
and it's not healthy. What's your opinion about this?
Yes, I would agree with you. I would agree. I mean, each to their own, obviously,
Sure, sure.
but I do tend to agree that, we have, body hair for a reason. It didn't just grow there by accident, So I think probably left well alone is a really good strategy. Yeah, these things are designed to protect us. So yeah, it might just be a good thing to just sort of let nature take its course because
Yeah,
nature is wise. Nature is incredibly
just
wise.
a lot of those creams, those shaving creams, have a lot of toxins in them that people don't
Yeah,
think about. And I
yeah,
think, especially if I'm working with somebody who's sick, you know, you want to cover every stone and leave no stone unturned and be like,
yes,
look, okay, you've been diagnosed with this at least until you're better. Don't touch a razor blade. Don't go
yeah,
near that other
yeah,
stuff. And I hear when women shave their armpits, they create little cuts, and when they put the
yes.
deodorant on, and this can literally create breast cancer and other issues, I've heard. And so it's like, all right, look, your difference, your culture might be different, but just do this to get better. Let your
Mm,
body be the way it's supposed to be. Eat the way it's
yeah,
supposed to eat, and
yeah,
don't do
yeah,
these. Try to, look,
yes.
okay, you can't walk around nature in public naked, but if you got a backyard, get some sun, get around naked. That hair will protect you. Stop putting on the suntan. Go out
Yeah,
at a decent time when it's not too late. And in the daytime, instead of the mask on your face, wear a hat to protect your face. But
mm,
try to get back to your roots. Walk around, walk barefoot. Everything we got to try to get you better, including diet, where
mm,
people often focus on diet, but they don't look at the lymph system, they don't look at the skin, they don't consider the makeup and the creams and everything else. But we got to
mm.
leave no stone unturned.
I agree with you. Absolutely. It's very interesting, actually, that you mentioned deodorants and so on. What I've noticed in myself and other vegans, whole food vegans that I know, and my patient group have also reported to me, is that they've noticed that they don't need deodorant. They cease to need it because our body's odor changes
Exactly.
dramatically. So yeah, vegans definitely smell better.
Exactly. Exactly.
We do. It's just a thing.
Now, I'll tell you another thing that I find is that one of the most unhealthiest habits most women do. Sadly, some men, most women. And if they just stop this one thing, their life would change. So the spine is the most important thing. I mean, not every part's important, but it connects to every muscle. It's so important to exercise and have a healthy spine. But in the name of fashion or beauty, or like you were saying earlier, just women are told they're not enough. One of the
Mm,
worst things, in my opinion, a woman could do is walk around in high heels.
mm,
Now, I'm not talking
mm,
about heels. I'm
mm.
talking about these really high heels. It's
Yes.
so
Yeah.
bad for the spine. And
Mm,
it literally destroys people's not only their spines, but their muscles and everything. And I've seen women that just decide to stop using them and they've gotten better from so many ailments. Have you found that or thought about that or anything like that?
yeah, do you know, it's a really interesting thing. As you are talking to a former ballet dancer, but former ballerina. So, two things. First of all, you think about what we do in ballet, we're on point, which is a super extreme version of being on a high heel, right? Do ballet dancers get bad backs? Not typically, no, they don't, because the musculature is strong enough to be able to cope. Plus, we're also doing, hours and hours of pliés at the bar and, constant strengthening exercises. However, women who are not ballet dancers, and men who are not ballet dancers, anybody wearing a very, very high heel, it isn't, if you have not got the musculature to support that, if your back is not strong enough, you are setting yourself up for problems in later life. Absolutely. no doubt about it. So yeah, and most people don't have the physical strength that ballet dancers have. So I would say, a moderate, actually, a very flat shoe is not deemed to be particularly good for
No, a small heel.
a small heel. The kind of heel you might get in a trainer, for example, is ideal. So it just distributes the weight in a really good fashion that is actually, health promoting. Because what I want people to do is to walk as much as they can. When it comes to exercise, I believe in walking as much as we can. Obviously, there has to be some resistance training because we know that that really does help us and staves off osteoporosis, osteopenia, and so on. But also, then, of course, I do really like to promote the idea of mindful exercise, whether that's a Pilates class, a yoga class, perhaps a little bit of Tai Chi or Qigong, that sort of thing. Just to bring the mind back into the body, for the mind to connect with the body is a wonderful thing and very health promoting and life affirming. So yeah, I'm with you, Paul. Absolutely. High heels out.
Yeah, I saw my youngest daughter, she's absolutely obsessed with ballet. She loves it and she's doing
Really?
great at it. Yes. And we saw
Oh,
recently somebody walking on it was on a show called America's Got Talent.
oh
And
yes.
there was like 10 wine bottles and the
Oh
lady
yes.
walked on point. Did you see that? On every wine bottle across the thing. It was absolutely amazing. And
That's
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And any type
They,
of professional dancing or anything like that, you got to work really hard and you're in great shape. And like I tell people, exercise and whatever that means to you, just do enjoy what you do. But,
yes.
n most women wearing these heels are it's a disaster, creating and the dancing at most, wait, at most 3 or 4 hours and in a couple of sometime you're training for these points, but women that are walking around this, it's like all day,
Yes,
and
exactly. That's
it's
right.
you know
Yes.
it's
Yes. And
bad.
they just don't have that physical structure to be able to support that.
Yeah. Well,
Mm.
this interview has been so amazing. I appreciate you so much. Your story is so uh just inspiring, and I want everyone to consider to contact you. Your email is going to be on your website. All that's
Yeah.
below. You can contact Jenny through her website below and check out her book and all her information she has. And is there anything you'd like to say before we finish the interview?
No, Paul, I just want to say what an absolute privilege it is to have come to know you and to have been invited by you. Thank you. It's just wonderful. Sometimes in life, you just get to meet special, amazing people, and you are definitely one of those. So thank you for having me. It's been just such a pleasure, Paul. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, and I look forward to having you back again. Everybody, put questions below so we can have Jenny back again and ask her those questions. And until then, everybody, have a great day and a great raw life. And Jenny, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life, brighten up your life.